And we are live. Welcome to the TinySeed application info section. I had forgotten that we had that groovy theme song. That was nice. I was grooving out to that. Thanks for joining us today. I am Rob Walling, and we're going to be talking about TinySeed applications are open for our Americas batch of spring 2022. This is our fifth batch we're doing in Americas, and for our first ever batch in EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Asia. So I am your host, Rob Walling, and to my left is Mr. Alex McQuaid. He is the program manager for our TinySeed Europe Fund and Accelerator. And to my upper right now is Tracy Osborne, who many of you have heard from before and are familiar with. Both.
See me dance.
Yep, seen her dance. You've seen her on the podcast. You saw her in the last application info session. And she is the program director for TinySeed Americas. Welcome, you two.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm so excited for this. It's fun having another face here. So welcome to Alex.
I know, this is my first time live too. It's exciting.
Yes. This is trial by fire for Alex. He started about 7 weeks ago with TinySeed. And so it's great to be like, hey, suddenly you're going to be live streaming in front of hundreds of people.
Go.
How does it feel?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. So today we're going to be going to Tracy for a brief overview of TinySeed. We won't belabor that too much. We know that most people watching this have read through the website, have been following TinySeed for a while. Then we'll flip over to Alex for a minute or two about TinySeed Europe and how that is the same and different than America's. Probably talk through briefly the investment terms, and then we will do live Q&A. And yep, questions are already rolling in. So this is what happened last time is we said, what if no questions come in and we have to end early? And then we end with like 20 extra questions. So let's zip through this intro piece so we can get into the good stuff. Tracy, you want to give the TinySeed overview?
Cool. Yeah. Like Rob said, our website, pretty proud of our website. I think most of this information is on there. So if you haven't seen our website, please go check it out. We have frequently asked questions. We have a huge overview of our program and how it works. But in a nutshell, TinySeed is not just a venture fund. We don't just invest in founders, though the money is nice. It is a year-long remote accelerator designed to help companies who have revenue-generating business scale faster with community and mentorship and weekly calls with experts. We have some of the best subject matter and SaaS entrepreneurs as mentors on our program. So we, like Rob said, we were on our fifth batch for what we're calling TinySeed Americas. This is our batch that's kind of, everything is kind of centered around the Americas time zones, which I should say, we do accept startups that are like in Australia. We have an Australian startup in our next batch. It's just like kind of where those calls are scheduled. And then we have our new TinySeed Europe program, which I will pass over to Alex to go over that.
Cool. So yeah, with TinySeed Europe, in the past, we've had a lot of founders in Europe that have wanted to take part in TinySeed, but it was a bit challenging. So most, like Tracy was saying, TinySeed operated in US time zones. Most of our retreats were in the US. And that was just, and you had to reincorporate into the US, which is a big barrier for a lot of companies. But with TinySeed Europe,
clarify on that. You don't have to be a US, but it had to be somewhere in North or South America. So
yeah. But if you were in Europe, traveling over to the US 3 times a year for retreats was a big commitment, just a lot of challenges. And what we're doing with TinySeed Europe is getting rid of those challenges and taking the best parts of TinySeed and bringing them over to Europe. So what does that look like in terms of things that are new? First off, I guess me, that would be new. So I will be in Europe. I will be on the ground, European time zones, and I will be the program manager for TinySeed Europe. So that means you'll have access to me without having to worry about time zone differences. I'll be at all the events, of course, everything that you would expect from a program manager. The other big thing I want to note is that even though TinySeed Europe is the name, what we're actually focused on is European time zones. So that is GMT to GMT plus 3, which really encompasses the entire EMEA region, which is Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
And we've already had 2 folks chime in. Someone from Egypt, someone from Algeria is in the audience. So thank y'all for coming.
Which is super exciting. So I'm really trying to push that. I hope that if you're out there, if you're in the Middle East or Africa, please know that we are excited to hopefully see your applications roll in, and that this is the program for you. Outside of that, the big thing is that programming is going to be on European time zones. So no calls at weird night hours.
Late night hours, like a lot
No
of
need to worry
European
about
founders
that.
have to do.
We will be doing all of our calls with our mentors, our playbook calls. They will be happening during normal European business hours. And our events will be planned and designed across multiple cities in Europe. Still determining what a lot of those are, but they will be easy to travel to and a lot of cool, exciting locations. What's staying the same? All of the best parts of TinySeed. So it is still a year-long accelerator program. We still have the same great group of mentors that you'll have access to, which is really a big part of TinySeed. You know, I think Rob says a lot, but oftentimes with people that come in and they're like, is TinySeed worth it? Even if I don't need the money, I really want mentorship. And that is a really strong aspect of our program. Incredible mentors, and TinySeed Europe will have the same access to these mentors that are at the core of our program. Investment terms are the same, and our famous TinySeed playbook that you'll go through the first few months of the program is still at the core of the program. So yeah, those are the main things I want to highlight. It's taking the best of TinySeed and making it easy to access for our European founders. So I'm really excited to get started there.
Thanks so much, Alex. That's awesome. And you'll be joining me next Wednesday on MicroConf On Air, where we will spend about 30 minutes talking about MicroConf Europe and taking, even more questions about the EMEA batch. And the batch, to answer, I heard a question the other day, when does the batch start? Well, we're running the batch parallel with our US/Americas batch. So May 1st for 1 year is when both the batches will start.
I want to pop into one more thing, because I know one of our questions while we're talking about regions is people are asking about APAC, Asia Pacific, and I think it's pretty obvious to see our roadmap. If we started with North America based or America's based program, now we're doing Europe, and stay tuned for it's definitely on our roadmap to have APAC. It's not here yet, but I know that some people are going to ask that. We're definitely working on that.
Indeed. And I should pipe in, we actually launched a syndicate as well, which is for folks who are maybe further along, than would want to apply to an accelerator. TinySeed.com/syndicate.
Yeah. We're doing a lot on a small team, I got to say.
No, we really are. Definitely a bootstrapped. We're a bootstrapped fund, right?
Yeah.
It's like capital efficient. I want to remind folks to ask questions. We are taking live questions. You can ask them wherever you're watching this. If you're watching it on YouTube, if you're watching it on the TinySeed website in the embed, there's a submit a question button, or you can enter it in the YouTube chat. And they're pouring in already. We have 5 questions that I think we should just dive into. Like, we have this line item to go through the investment terms, but they're in the FAQ. It's pretty simple. So if someone is like, what are our investment? Just go to tinyseed.com/FAQ and look there. We've done this, thousands of applicants, funded 60 companies. I think people probably have a decent idea of what our terms are at this point. So with that, I want to give as much time as possible to live Q&A. First question, what requirements are there on the legal entity with the new MicroConf Europe fund? And basically, we don't have a solid requirement of you have to be in this country. We are going to play it by ear for this first batch and see what comes in. I think we have a pretty good inkling that we get a lot of applicants from the UK, for example. So for us to support a UK entity is high on my personal list to rally for, because it just makes sense. There's a couple other countries that I think will make a lot of sense. I think we're going to take it on a case-by-case basis, in all honesty. I think we'll wind up like what we found in the Americas is we do North American entities, we do Canadian entities, and then we've done a couple, I think we've done one South American, and then we've also, I think, US VI, is that right? US Virgin Islands,
yep.
We've done one?
Yep, that's correct.
And so that's kind of where we've landed. But we're almost 3 years into this, 4 batches, we've kind of hit our stride. I think it's going to take a batch or two for us to really nail down maybe we only support these particular countries, or maybe we keep it open forever because we find out it's not as egregiously expensive as it appears. That's a limiting factor here, right? It's not it's not our desire. It is the amount of legal cost and effort to fund a company and tax compliance. There's all this stuff that comes with us funding a company. If we were to try to fund in, let's say, 20, EMEA countries, it becomes very, very complex. And so that's what we're trying to manage.
So yeah, for founders, what you need to know is that wherever you're incorporated, if you're interested in TinySeed Europe or even TinySeed America, is like this goes for both. Is that if we give you we tell you we want to fund you, we will then work with you, look at where you're incorporated, and advise and help you. Like we want to fund you at that point, and so there is this period between that offer and the start with the batch to it's a few months, and it allows us to get everything placed so we can fund you. So for European for folks applying for TinySeed Europe, don't worry about changing anything. Don't worry about where you're incorporated or whether you're incorporated or whatnot. Submit an application, and then if you get to that part of that process, we will work with you and make things happen. The same thing goes for TinySeed US. We want to have that conversation with you, so there's nothing you need to really worry about pre-application.
Yeah. And we often get a lot of questions, whether it's directly. I think I got a Twitter DM and a Facebook message today saying, hey, I have this app that does this, and is it this much, or should I apply? And my answer is like, the application, if you know your numbers, the application takes 20 minutes. So if in doubt, apply. That's going to be and I bet we'll get some questions today are like, do you fund XYZ marketplace with blah? And it's like, if you're in doubt and you have revenue, apply, because then we can have that conversation. And this is not a 3-hour process. It's not going to kill half your day. It's going to kill 20 minutes, maybe 30 if you spend a lot of time on it. So if in doubt, apply,
Yeah. And yes, no's don't come off just the application. There's a few extra stages where there's like an initial phone screen with myself or Alex. There was further phone, I say phone screen, like we chat with you, then chats with Rob and Einar. We ask questions on your application. So whatever goes in the application, you're not going to be accepted just based on that. If we're interested in you and your everything looks like you could be a fit, we'll have a conversation with you over the phone. So I just want to say is application, make sure everything's as correct as possible. But if there's like questions about certain areas or trying to get to like certain amount of perfection, like don't worry about it, because we will. If you're a good fit for TinySeed, we'll definitely chat with you, and we're able to like dig into those issues over the phone or Zoom or whatnot.
Yep. And I think Tracy's cat also agrees with that sentiment. Cat or a dog somehow make a noise.
All right. I didn't know that was being picked up. He's outside my room.
Yeah, it happens. I'm surprised if my kids weren't at school this week, they'd be coming in right now. Next question. When I log into the application site, so that's if you go to tinyseed.com/apply and you click apply for the accelerator. When I log into the application site, will the information from the last application be pre-populated? So this person has obviously applied to a previous batch. So will it be pre-populated, or can you set us up?
That is a great question. It will not be pre-populated, but if you send an email over to hello@tinyseed.com, I will open up your previous application for you, and you can resubmit that one. So that's not done automatically. I can't open up everyone automatically, but I'm happy to do it on a case by case basis if you send it over. That said, I am also interested in seeing how I'll work with you over email on this, but one of the reasons why it's not pre-populated is the questions about how you get customers, you might have a different answer this time. And it's really useful for us to see your previous answers and then see how things have evolved since your last application. That's actually one of my most favorite parts about reviewing applications, is seeing the progress of businesses, of people who are re-applicants. I love re-applicants. There's one of our startups, I want to say, applied in every single batch, and they finally get into fall 2022 because we just could not say no at that point, because we were able to see the progress between their applications. So it's one of those kind of things where I'll work with you over email, look at a previous application. There's an instance where I'd love to see, maybe you just copy it over to the new application if you're able to see your previous answers. But it's definitely something that I'm happy to chat with you over email.
Yeah, we have had a lot of multi-time applicants, and we have funded a lot of multi-time applicants, folks who've just made a little more progress since the last time.
Definitely, if you didn't get into TinySeed in a previous batch and you're still interested in TinySeed, please reapply. We miss awesome people every time, mainly because we have a limited amount of slots. So, if you have growth between your previous application and then your currently reapplying, that's amazing. And I feel like that's like a huge bonus if we're able to see that growth between applications.
It's a great signal, yeah. Next question. For the slide deck, is it better to emphasize current traction, market potential, mix of both, or other things? So I would say if you have traction in a working business, and you don't have a slide deck, don't make a slide deck. We actually,
it's optional.
We literally say slide decks are optional. If we added so we didn't have a field for slide deck for the first batch or two, but people were asking like, no, I have this deck I want to send you. So we said, fine, we'll take it. I look at, but like each of us evaluates differently, I'll say, but I look at your business metrics. I have probably opened literally thousands of applicants. I think I've opened 2 or 3 slide decks. Because the slide deck is the least important thing. You'll often hear me say, build your business instead of your slide deck. And that, because MRR is the best slide deck. MRR is the best story to tell. I don't want to, if you have a slide deck and you are proud of it, submit it. Because Tracy or Einar or Alex that may be more their thing. But that's kind of my take on it.
It's one of those things where we don't evaluate, like the first evaluation, we don't look at the slide deck or maybe a quick glance, but it could potentially, something we might look at in later stages of the process when we're like really digging into your company, but it's never been something that we need. So if you have it, feel free to upload it. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. We're on, the rest of the questions are the ones we actually have in the applications are the main ones that we're looking at. We're like evaluating off of.
A reminder to keep submitting those questions. We have at least 15 more to go through, and they're being asked faster than we can answer, which is great. Next question. I'm pre-revenue, but have validated with some customers paying deposits. With the application, will you expect to see financial projections? Tracy. Have we ever seen financial projections? Probably in a slide deck somewhere. Because projections are guessing, unless you really have a predictable business where you have product market fit and you're predictably growing X amount every month. Projections are, and I would say this as a founder myself, I would say I kind of guess where I'll be in a year, but it's a guess. So no, we don't expect to see financial projections.
I don't think I've ever even thought about it.
Nope. And in fact, so if you have pre-orders or pre-purchases, then where it says MRR, you can put, what would you put? You put 0, and then there's an other, right? There's an other field where you can then explain like, hey, so I have these purchases. Is kind of how I would think about it. Or if you have pre-purchase commitments of $500 MRR once you launch, then put yourself at 500, but then just caveat it of like, these are pre-purchase commitments. I'm not live yet, and explain it out, because we read, I would say almost every application. I think you read every one, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Well, yeah. Alex and I will definitely go through every single one. And when you click on the application, if you click that you had 0 revenue, there will be a field that pops in that allows you to expand on any traction that you have that might not be MRR.
Awesome. Next question. We've built a Shopify app. We don't have many users yet, and we are located in Bulgaria, Europe. Can we apply for TinySeed? So Alex, they're in Bulgaria, Europe. Can they apply for TinySeed?
I would.
All right.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty straightforward answer. Absolutely.
I agree. And we have, I'm trying to think, I don't know that we've funded a Shopify app. We have funded Heroku add-ons. We funded WordPress plugins with the potential.
We've been close to funding.
Yep, we have.
Definitely a few.
Late stage. And it's not purely because our Shopify app, we want to see the opportunity to then move away from the single platform, right? That you're thinking about, because platform risk on Shopify can be a bit rough. If you don't have many users yet, that's fine. That will obviously, that's the traction, right? You're going to have to enter your numbers and we look at those. So when in doubt, try it out. That's my thing. No, when in doubt, apply, right? When in doubt, apply. So again, if it takes you 20 minutes to do it, we'll take a look at your application. Next question. If we have a real SaaS product with customers, but are pre-revenue, would we still be a candidate for TinySeed? So my definition of a customer is someone who is paying you money. So that doesn't jive. You can't have customers and be pre-revenue, but maybe you have users and are pre-revenue. As a rule, we discourage folks who do not have at least $500 in monthly recurring revenue to apply for TinySeed. And that's both to save you time and also to save us time. I think we got close to 1,000 applicants in our first batch, and it was because we got a lot of ideas. Here's a slide deck. And we don't fund ideas. We fund things that are a little bit further along.
But when you go into the why about that, it's because of the program. It's because of the way that playbook calls that we've set up and the mentors, and kind of like when you're pre-revenue, the kind of problems you're working on are different than the ones where you at least have some amount of revenue and you're looking to scale that. And so the program and the things that we work on applies the best for folks who have some amount of revenue. And you might not get as much out of TinySeed if we funded you pre-revenue, because you'll be spending so much time trying to achieve that amount of revenue. So it's not just like we're trying to be jerks or trying to like, it's not just because of the applications, but it's because we know where we can be of most help, and it's to help folks scale.
Yep, that's a great answer. Thanks, Tracy.
Ha!
All right. Next question. If we are pre-app dev, so we do not have software, but we are manually emulating the app that will facilitate our methodology, would that possibly qualify, or would the app itself, the software, need to be in beta, et cetera? The $120K from TinySeed would be what we need to start development. Ooh, I like this question because this is, yeah. So I'm going to weigh in, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well.
What? No, I want to hear your thoughts because
So to me, if you have built a business that you're doing manually, whether it's with human automation like a virtual assistant, or you're just behind the scenes cranking out Excel spreadsheets that later on software will build, and you've built that to multiple thousands a month in monthly recurring revenue, I want to talk to you because that is amazing hustle. And to me, that's some type of traction. If we could fund businesses without software, it would be a lot easier, right? But the software is essentially what creates a lot of value in the business. But truly, like customers paying you for a result, that's where the true value is. So I would say, yes, apply. Let's have a conversation. Just make sure to caveat somewhere in the application that like this revenue, that we don't have software yet, but we plan to build it. And because we do have some folks who come in and put a lot of revenue, but it's like purely consulting revenue, for example. It's like, I'm writing custom software for each of these clients, but I have 10K a month in recurring revenue. It's like, yeah, but you're not SaaS, and you're not even headed in the direction of SaaS. Versus this question asker has basically built a human-powered MVP of a SaaS product, it sounds like.
Cool. I'm glad you answered that because I
like it.
That was really illuminating for me.
That one's out of left field. I don't know that we've had many people do that, but I love the hustle there.
I think it's the cool part of the applications, though. There's nuance, and you can provide more context and give us the story, and
that's
that
right.
lets us, look beyond the numbers.
Yep.
I will say that like most of the application fields will have like a little note saying, for a few saying limit to 1 to 2 paragraphs, but there's no actual physical limit, and we're not going to ping you if you do more. Mm-hmm. We just kind of want to let people know that we don't require to do giant answers. But if you need that space to give us more clarity about what you're working on or kind of go into more detail, like feel free to blow past that 2-paragraph answer. I just don't want everyone to feel like they have to do more than that. But it's, there is no physical limit. So feel free to add that context if you need.
All right. Next question. Is it possible to join the accelerator without funding? So I'm guessing that this person wants to have the mentorship, the advice, and the community, but not take funding. Well, if you're still willing to give up the same amount of equity, absolutely. We'll take it. That's the kicker,
I think
right?
that was the question, right? Yeah.
So yes, we will happily take you without funding, but in order for this to be worth the whole mission of TinySeed, we have to take some ownership. Otherwise, we're essentially a nonprofit, and that's not how the fund works. So,
if you want to see how the fund works, we actually have that on our website. It's in the footer. It's under /thesis. So tinyseed.com/thesis. And that's it's up there. You can read how we're talking about TinySeed to investors and get some more clarity in terms of how we work on that side of things.
Yeah, that's a great page. Yeah.
I'm going to jump down.
Okay. I was just going to say like that usually people, we get that question probably every round because the value of TinySeed mostly comes from our community and our mentorship. But like Rob says, I think we talked about maybe exploring it, but I think it wasn't.
It just doesn't make as much sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, there are probably, I would say 70-ish% of the companies who we fund through TinySeed tell us we don't actually need this money.
Yeah.
Like we are at the point where we can just figure
Vast
it out.
majority, yeah.
We can do revenue-based financing. Like we would figure it out without the money. But still some people do, 10, 20, 30% do need the money. So it's cool if you need it and it's cool if you don't. The vast majority of the value though, because you can go get 120, 180K from a lot of different sources. You cannot get the mentorship, the advice, and the community that you get from TinySeed from anywhere else. I'm going to jump down to a question because it's just so fundamental. Do you accept solo founders?
Yes.
Ooh, big article on that recently.
Yep. Not only do we accept, but we are, what do you call it? Almost
Bullish?
biased. I am biased, bullish.
Yeah.
Yep, biased
Yeah.
towards solo founders, especially with bootstrappers, capital efficient companies. The venture industrial complex has seemed to be, I'll say, a little bit anti-single founder, and they really want 2, 3, 4 person teams. The vast majority of the successful bootstrappers that I've seen in my 16 years, 15 years of doing this have been single founders. And so if I were to guess of the 60 companies we've funded, I think 3/4 of them are single founders. You think that's accurate? Somewhere
I
in
want
that.
to say 50%.
Really? We need to figure. We need to look at this. So somewhere in between 50 and 75.
We should look
let's
into
say.
that. Yeah.
So, anyways, yes, single founders, awesome.
It's almost like you can be scrappier because as a single founder, you have to wear a lot of hats. We love people who wear a lot of hats. There's a thing about being a founder, and you're just constantly having to learn everything you need to order to get your company to the next level. And I feel like solo founders are of that mindset. I say that I'm biased because I was a former solo founder myself with my last startup.
Same.
Yeah, exactly. We
I've
love
been as
it.
well.
We love scrappy people who will, learn what they need to learn in order to take their company out to the next level. Because that's really what TinySeed is doing. Is we're going to be throwing a lot of information and a lot of best practices, and just like really just filling your brain with like all of that, so you can just go out and get things done.
Hey, Judy. Judy said hi. Thanks for that question, Digital CEO. That's a really good one, and I'm glad we covered it.
Yeah.
Next question: do UK companies need to be SEIS or EIS registered? So for those, Tracy, Alex, are you familiar with those?
I'm not.
Okay, cool. And this is we will all be familiar with this in 6 months after we've read a first batch. But basically, in the UK, you can apply for these statuses, SEIS, EIS, where if you raise like an angel round or I think even venture, the investors are in either the UK or the EU. I don't know exactly, but they get this huge tax break. Huge. So it's like if I write you a $100,000 check, I'm in the UK funding a UK company, you're SEIS registered, I get a $25,000 tax credit, not a write-off, but a credit on my next tax return. So it's like a huge benefit. The answer is, I don't believe so. And if you're not already, you should still apply. And if we decide that is advantageous, we have 3 months of due diligence and back and forth about this. This is truly an A&R question because he's most familiar with all the legality and stuff. But my gut is, I think you have to be a UK-based fund or investor in order to take advantage of that. And our fund will not be located in the UK, so I don't believe that we can take advantage of it. So,
for anyone who's not aware of our team, Einar is the other general partner of TinySeed.
Right. And he does a lot of the fundraising and the legal side of things. Next question, we have revenue from a few different products that are related and address similar customer problems. Would they all be considered as part of an application under a single umbrella? Tracy Makes?
I feel like we've gotten we funded a few people like this, right? That have a few different products under one umbrella. Yeah. So yeah, it's
we talked to someone who had a suite of Shopify apps, who had like 5 Shopify apps and applied with them all under the same umbrella.
Yeah.
So
one application is definitely better because we can see everything as a whole. We can see your business as a whole. We can talk to you. Because if it's multiple applications, we might miss that it's the same person. The way that the application system is set up, because we evaluate each application individually, not like by submitter. So definitely put that under one application.
Yes, indeed. Next question. We've launched a closed beta of our Cloud Observability product. We are 2 months away before making it commercially available. Is it a good time to apply, or is it better to apply when you have paying customers? I would say apply when you have paying customers. This is why we run batches every 6 months, because if you're in beta, or if you go live in 2 months, it gives you 4 months to get traction. And whatever it is, August, September, when we open the next
August, probably.
August. Yep.
Which is just Americas, though, right? We'll have to clarify.
Correct. Yeah, good point.
Mm-hmm.
It's not EMEA. EMEA is only once a year, or EU's right now is only once a year. Yeah, we'll be moving to twice a year, I think. But
yeah, we did 2 1 year, like 2019, 2020. We're kind of following the same playbook we did before, where we tested out the system, made sure everything worked, did it once a year. Moving to 2 years we moved to 2 years for the Americas, starting slowly with Europe. So yes, only 1 application per year for Europe right now. That said, if you launch your app and it is taking off, and you're like, I can't wait, especially for Europe. I can't wait another 8 months. Send us an email. We have the syndicate. There is a possibility for late acceptances.
Mid-batch. Yep.
Mid-batch acceptances. So there are things. It's really, we're flexible people. Nothing is set in stone. We try to leave guidelines. If you're in that situation, feel free to reach out and we can let you know.
Next question. What are the typical metrics that you use to evaluate investment opportunities aside from the minimum $500 a month in revenue? Follow-up, are investment terms the same or prorated if a founder is part-time? So I'll answer that second question first. One of the conditions of, there's really two conditions that we fund a founder on, or founders, is number one, that when you accept our money, that you do go full-time on the product. So you no longer can be part-time on it.
All founders, right?
Yep. All founders, yes.
Unless and investment firms are per founder. And I guess there's a situation where if you have multiple founders and one founder doesn't go part-time, it just means the investment would change.
Right. Doesn't go full-time. So we do have a couple cases where all the founders didn't go full-time, but then they get the investment amount only for the number of founders who went full-time. So there's no prorating there. And then what are the typical metrics that you use to evaluate? I mean, yeah, that's like a whole podcast episode or something, but it's like, it's the people, it's product market fit, it's price sensitivity. We have like 41 things in a Google Doc of like, it's traction, it's what we think of the founders, it's what we think of the market opportunity. It's basically, it's a very long list.
Yeah, like I said, the yeses never come from looking at the application and sending over yes. There's always going to be probably at least 2 chats with the TinySeed team as we dig into, we ask follow-up questions, we dig into some of your answers, we have to do more evaluation. So everything in the application is technically considered.
Yep. And there's a follow-up to that. Can you explain what defines a second or third founder? Is it an equity percentage or something else that adjusts the funding amount you provide? And so, yes, a founder is defined as someone who owns at least 15% of the company and who is willing to go full-time, to work full-time on the product once you receive the funding.
Yeah.
Next question, is raising a funding round alongside a TinySeed application something that could work? So here's the advice that we give. The best, what we found to be the optimal way is some companies come in, they raise the TinySeed money, and then within 2 to 4 months later, they then raise essentially a follow-on round. And that is inevitably at a higher valuation because of the value that TinySeed brings. And usually that follow-on is maybe a safer convertible note, whereas we are, straight equity. And these days you can, if you have a network and want to raise it, that's great. We also can, help with that. We have our own TinySeed LPs. We have our TinySeed syndicate for follow-on. So the answer is effectively yes to that question. But I wouldn't do it alongside. I would do it a few months later because you just get more bang for your buck then because the valuation increases.
Yeah, and there's some nitpicky details in that, our investment is not a safe or convertible note, it is equity. And so there are some situations where, I don't know, so for some people that might be an issue with if you raise previous money. I don't know. Nothing, again, this is not nothing is a bad thing or it would prevent us from investing in you, but I'm just saying that take a look at our investment terms as well and make sure that plays well with your plans.
Next question, is it strictly B2B? And the answer is yeah, pretty much. But I mean, we've had some kind of prosumer, like for example, we funded Squadcast and Castos, which service podcasters, right? And there are B2B podcasts, or they're podcast businesses, but then there are also hobbyists that use it. So if you have some path to get to some price above $9 a month, I mean, usually the problem with prosumer or consumer is it's like, well, I can charge $6 a month and I need 1 million people to actually make money, or I need 100,000 people. That's usually the issue. However, it
usually requires the VC path for that.
Right.
You need a lot more money into your business to get to scale to that level.
Right. And so strictly B2B, it's like, yeah, we lean that way, but like B2B, like a VSB, a very small business is, a solopreneur consultant who needs a platform to manage her coaching business. And so it's like, would you call that it's not enterprise, but it's like she runs a business, We have had some folks apply who have, say have stuff in like the tabletop gaming space. And we have actually had conversations with them. So if you have traction and you truly are B2C and you have traction, we should still chat. But in general, like if you look down the list of companies we funded, it has wound up overwhelmingly, like maybe like 99 out of 100, but been pretty B2B focused.
Yeah. I mean, it's another case also where our program is geared more towards B2B.
Yeah.
So there are things that you would go through as a B2C company that we wouldn't be able to help with, because our experience, our mentors' experience, and our program are kind of around the issues of B2B businesses. And there are things that, we want to make sure that everyone who is in TinySeed is getting the most out of TinySeed. So that is also something that I would have a chat with the person about, is just to make sure that if you're a B2C business and you're interested in TinySeed and we're interested in working with you, I would have a chat with you in terms of, making sure the program works for the challenges that you're going to face.
I would agree. That's a good way to think about it, because I do think the reason we talked to a couple of the B2C founders who applied is I think they did a lot of content and SEO, and we do have content and SEO expertise and mentors and advisors. But if you have some other channel that's like, whatever, it's a pure B2C play, it may not be a fit. The second part of that question is there no room at all for a pre-revenue SaaS? Pretty much. I mean, we haven't funded a pre-revenue SaaS in the past. I think we did 1 or 2 in the first batch and then none after that. So that's pretty much been it's like 500 a month and up, apply. Other than that, get traction and then apply once you do, and that's why we have the openings so frequently. How many SaaS businesses can you submit? Well, as many as you have, doing 500 a month or up.
That's the thing. It's like when someone submits that question, I think like, are all of them making over 500?
Exactly, right. Or these ideas you have. Because if they're just ideas, like work on one and get it to the point where it makes sense for us to fund. Because if we were to fund you and give you our expertise and you just have an idea, I'm just not sure how much we can actually help you at that stage. And maybe it takes you 2-3 years to get to the point, where you have the traction, that you need to keep going. Do you fund SaaS that have reseller component to their product? I think that might mean white labeling. And we've had folks work with resellers on whether someone resells their product or whether they are being resold or whatever. So I would say yes. That's not a deal breaker for us. Let's see. Next question. I'm zipping through these because they're just keep
so many.
Up. Right. We got about 20 minutes and I want to get through. I think we might be able to get through them, but if you have questions, again, feel free to keep submitting them. That is why I'm going so quickly. I am based in the UK personally, but I have a US C-corp. Which location would be best in your opinion? Would I qualify for the UK-based fund, or does it not matter? I know the answer to this, but does anyone else?
I don't think.
Alex?
I think we would be. I mean, the main part of TinySeed Europe is time zone and accessibility. So, I think you should go ahead and apply for the EU Europe fund, and that'll work just fine.
Yeah,
Bingo.
I think it would be better accessibility for the founder. The incorporation stuff is fine. What was the other thing? Oh yeah, the application, I should say, is that the application asks which are you applying for, Americas, Europe, or don't know. And that means that we will work with you on that. So feel free to, if this question pops up for anyone, you have a weird situation, feel free to choose don't know, and we'll find the best bucket for you.
Ooh, that's smart.
I know, I didn't run that by. I just put that in there.
That's really smart. I love it when people do smart things and I don't have to be involved. All right. I have revenue, but it is from sponsors of the product or service. It's an open source like product, but a hosted version is only available for a recurring fee for sponsors or supporters. Do you classify this as MRR? If it's a recurring fee to sponsors or supporters, yeah, if it's monthly recurring, I would classify it as MRR. And then if there's annual fees, I would usually divide those by 12 and make them MRR. But this is where it's that asterisk and there's an other, like, tell us more about your MRR. And you can say, this is from sponsors. So I'm guessing, they're not users of the system, but they're somehow sponsoring it because they feel like they want to support it. I'm not super.
It's something we would dig into.
Yes, exactly. We would just ask you more questions. Next question is, are there mandatory aspects related to the team? And I think this, Yeah.
I was gonna say there's nothing mandatory other than the fact the investment is based on founders being full-time. But in terms of the program itself, try to keep everything as not mandatory and as optional as possible. So all the in-person retreats are optional. All of the calls are optional. They're recorded. I take questions beforehand. So if you miss the call, I can ask that question for you, and then you can review the recording afterwards. Founders are super busy, and you're doing events and going to conferences and working on your business and whatnot. And so if the actual program, nothing is mandatory, because the most important part of the business is you working on the business. So we try to make things as accessible as possible. It's awesome if people can show up to things when they're being run, when they're run live, but definitely nothing is mandatory.
Muted myself, sorry. From the application, how many customers are in your target market? What geography should we consider? So personally, I would, if I were in the Americas, then I would, if I'm focused on North American market, then I would put North America. If I was in Luxembourg and you're only going after people in Luxembourg, then I would probably state that and then say, but then there's X amount in the entire European Union, which we can then, expand into if needed. So there's...
Doesn't have to be exact. It's another one where we're happy to follow up with questions.
Yep. Are you considering applications that depend on external paid APIs, but reselling them in a different way? Yes. If you have added value to an external paid API, think of what almost every email service provider is, except for MailChimp. They have their own infrastructure, but most of them, and Infusionsoft, but most of them pay SendGrid or an equivalent Mailgun equivalent service. And they're basically just building a value layer on top of that to allow you to build emails and all that. So a lot of businesses come down to just being on an external paid API. So absolutely. Next question. Do you also welcome SaaS apps that are running on a blockchain ecosystem? I would love to fund a blockchain startup. Are you kidding me? If you have revenue,
Peter is somewhere yelling.
Crypto?
He's
Yeah, exactly. He's
that.
cheering. Blockchain. I would love to do blockchain. I'm into NFTs. Tabletop role-playing games. No, wait a minute. These are just and I'm just rattling off my hobbies, but yes, absolutely. We would love to have a conversation with you. I see the next question is, I see the perks listed here, which is tinyseed.com/perks-overview. I was wondering what the precise amount is for the AWS credits. And do you know if a startup can take advantage of your AWS credits if they already did an AWS Activate program?
So the first part of that question, I'm actually not sure if I can say it here. It might be a part
like
of
a light NDA with them.
Yeah, it might be part of our agreement with AWS because they have so many programs to not advertise the amount publicly. So I apologize for that. I will say it's quite nice, and it is higher than most people. I think everyone has come into TinySeed. So the second part of the question, which is can you take advantage of the credits if you've already been through the program? If our credits are larger than the amount of credits you've redeemed so far, you'll get the difference. So you'll be bumped up to the next tier. So if I'm not going to do any numbers, but if ours is larger, then you can take advantage of that difference. Yes.
Is there a sweet spot?
It's likely larger.
Is there a sweet spot for the time the company has been in business? Can having been incorporated too long be a detrimental factor?
It's a good question.
Yeah, it is. I would say no. I mean, I think if you're just growing extremely slowly, let's say you've been in business 10 years and you're going $5 a month MRR and you have a great business, but it's very, very slow growing. That's the growth is more of a factor than the incorporation. Because we've had people who incorporated like on the side while they were working a day job and then worked a day job for 4 years. And so they incorporated in like 2015, 4 years on the side. And then they eventually quit their job 2019, 2020, or even 2021, and then went in on it. And so
we've had a lot of businesses that are many years before they joined TinySeed. Just, a lot of VC funds out there like only want new and shiny businesses. And that's definitely not us. We're happy to, if you have the growth and you're interested in TinySeed, yes, we'd love to chat with you.
And the question specific in the application asks growth in the last 6 months is what it tracks. So that really is, you can tell we're focused more on recent growth rather than 4 years ago.
That's true. Because a lot of startups are very slow. A lot of bootstrap startups are very slow growth in the early days because founders working a day job. We invoice our customers in advance for a whole year. Can we calculate the MRR as ARR divided by 12?
Yes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm enthusiastic. I'm making sure I'm right. Am I
do it up? Yeah. So divide it by 12 and then put in the explanation, say, but we bill annually, because that's actually an advantage. You bill annual means you get all the cash up front. So you have a more cash efficient business than if you were, ARR greater than MRR in essence. So just make a note of that. But the MRR will certainly be something we look at. We are in the process of closing a small round of funding, combining Love Money. I'm not sure what Love Money is. Combining Love Money and a few business angels. Are we in your scope, or would you consider we will no longer be bootstrapped? So it depends. The answer is just raising a prior round doesn't automatically exclude you from TinySeed. The problem that we've seen is some of the terms of safes or convertible notes make it hard or impossible to raise an accelerator round from any accelerator, us, or YC or anybody else after you raise that round. So my advice is Love Money is friends and family. I've never heard that term. So my advice is if you haven't closed the round yet and you really do want to throw your hat into TinySeed, just hold off long enough to hear back from us. Because then
you can let us know that you're in a rush, and we can definitely expedite that process.
Right. So then, because then if you get funded by TinySeed, then you can do the round after, and things tend to work out better. If you've already started closing the round or whatever, I would say when in doubt, still apply. And so apply and just mention exactly the terms. If it's a safe convertible note, what the valuation was, how much you raised. And here's the key thing is there a minimum amount raised to trigger a conversion on your note?
Question's in the application.
Okay,
so
good. That's there.
We ask that up front because we have had situations, essentially if you have if it converts at our valuation, it might not be a good deal for you. And it's not something, so it prompts you to look into that.
Right. So
as you're submitting the application.
It's not a no, it's just potentially a hurdle for you.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I'm curious about this field in the application. And then quotes, sales demo video. Sales demo, not product walkthrough or background. Can you clarify what type of video is appropriate to link here? How important is a video sales demo to the application? Grand majority of our sales demos are live. Is it worth recording a demo for the application?
That is a great question. It's not like a YC video. We don't want something like you fretting over and produce. Yeah. It's in one of those situations like the slide deck that if you have a sales video that you're passing along to customers, feel free to put it in there, and we can use that as we're going through your, add that to our, review. A recording of a video with a customer seems fine with me, right? There's no reason for it to be, just as long as the customer is aware.
Yeah, but we specifically say sales demo, not a product walkthrough.
Yeah, that's true.
Background. Mm-hmm. I think the original idea for this, again, I'm not even sure we had this in the initial application. I think people said, but I have this 90-second explainer video that's on my website that I want to put in here. And we so that, I think, is what we had in mind. Again, if you don't have one, don't record one. Your metrics should speak for themselves. The story is the whole rest of the application. If you have an explainer video or a 3-minute, hey, this is our product, this is what it does, throw it in there. And we'll, I do take a look at some of those.
Yeah. And some of the reason why, taking a look at the reasoning behind that is getting an idea for how you are as a salesperson. It's not going to be it's not going to break your application depending on how you are. It just gives us an extra view into your personality and kind of founder you are. But it's not something that is crucial for your application.
Users generate revenue using our product. We capture a percentage of that. They don't pay us directly through a subscription. Would you consider these customers? Yes, I would.
Yeah.
Indeed. And I would consider that revenue, that just the percent that you take. Don't list the top line, was it GMV, gross merchant value, but list your MRR with a caveat that it's technically not MRR. It's a little spiky because I bet 1 month you might have 500, next month you have 1,500, depending on if it's Black Friday, it goes up and down. List that. We take it into account. Longer term, if you got into TinySeed, first conversation I would have with you is how can you start charging subscription fees? Because every app that I've seen, really aside from Stripe, that charges based on a percentage, like Gumroad, like Shopify, they all launched with this percentage model, and they all now have subscription fees because it's very, very, very hard to build a business without some type of recurring revenue. All right, and predictable recurring revenue. Can the startup buy back equity in a few years? And the answer is there's nothing in our terms that somehow predetermine a price or a multiple. Certainly, if you got to the point where you wanted to buy back equity, you would come to us and we would say, okay, let's figure out what it's worth. And we could talk about that as an option. The reason we don't have predefined equity buyback clauses is it makes the terms and the contracts quite challenging, quite complex and confusing. And we've found that some of the terms in the kind of bootstrapper space can actually blow up on founders because you don't quite understand how they are because they're more complicated, and how they will react if you were to say raise a subsequent round without buying back your equity, that it multiplies or it explodes. Second thing is, because if you can buy back your equity, then isn't this really just a loan? Like we are in your corner for the long term. And
yeah,
we want
beyond the accelerator year. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so when we buy equity in a company, like we have companies we funded, 3.5 years ago. I've done 2 calls in the past month. I've made 2 referrals and we've helped them raise subsequent rounds in the past month. And so we are in your corner for long term. And if you can buy out the equity, again, it's like probably just, if you want to do that, do revenue-based financing, if you don't want that kind of long-term, I view it as a long-term partnership.
Yeah, the only thing that changes at the end of the accelerator year is that you stop getting invited to weekly calls. But everything else, the one-on-one intros to mentors, the community, the chatting with Rob and Einar, like all those things stay the same.
This next question is a good one. Today, our product is downloadable software with our customer portal is a web app. It is sold as a subscription, and we have ideas for a future version that is 100% hosted. Does a subscription model qualify for SaaS, even if the complete software is not hosted by us? Yes, absolutely. So that was in the first iteration of TinySeed, the very first batch, we said we fund subscription software. That was actually the tagline. But you know what? People were confused by that, and everyone knows what SaaS is. And so we changed it to SaaS. So yeah, subscription software of any kind, even subscription marketplaces. Like if you have a 2-sided marketplace and let's say you're taking a cut of deals, and you have a subscription component that you want to add or have already added, we want to talk to you.
I do want to say, I know this last call, but I do want to say one thing. Not everyone knows it's SaaS. I still remember speaking at MicroConf 2016 and meeting you, Rob, and you said, you're working on SaaS, right? And I was like, yeah. And then I ran back to my hotel room to figure out what SaaS was.
There you go.
Yeah, it was a SaaS. I just wasn't using that term. So I just want to say for anyone who's listening to this, that's totally fine. That's where I was as well.
Will companies in the EMEA program, the Europe, Middle East, and Asia program, need to be registered as a U.S. entity? Alex? Nope. You are clear. You do not need to register as a U.S. entity or incorporate in the U.S. That is one of the major block challenges that we're trying to remove by starting the program. So like Rob was talking about earlier, we'll want to hear if you already are incorporated somewhere, where that is, work with you, but you will not need to worry about that at all. Do we need to pursue new rounds of funding if we get accepted, or is it okay to just grow our company? This is it. This is why we started TinySeed, because every other accelerator is 90-day sprint and raise that round, and it's a failure if you don't raise it. Nope, that's not us.
No demo day, no nothing. Feel free to just continue working on your business.
Yep.
Totally fine.
Out of almost 60, I think we funded 59 companies. I believe 7 or 8 have raised, maybe 9 now have raised subsequent rounds. It is up to them. We help them do it if they want to. The others have not, and that's totally okay. And that's why TinySeed is so different.
That's why we're awesome.
Yep. And there was a follow-up to that. Actually, it's kind of a related, when do we have to open an LLC? So 2 things. You can open, if you're in the Americas, you can open an LLC or a C-corp. And we recommend Delaware, but you can open it wherever you want. We've had some founders come in where they're still taking their startup is on the side, and they're taking just Schedule C revenue, which just goes straight to their income tax in essence. And so we have Stripe Atlas that we will recommend that you use, and they can form an LLC or a
deal with them.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And it is super simple, and that's like a great corporate shell. And then you just need to work with your lawyer to then move all of your assets, all of the company's assets, the trademarks and the software ownership into that LLC or C Corp. So you can do that. If we made you an offer, we would make it contingent upon you doing that. Mm-hmm. All righty. My subscription model is per user. So my current highest pricing tier is what? Highest paying customer or highest seat price? I was highest paying customer. That's what I would do. Yeah. And put a caveat there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's another thing we could dig in with you, but
Yep.
We'll ask questions about that.
I have an established business funding the startup. Got it. So you have a startup, but you have an established business that's kind of providing the money for that. And all transactions are intermingled. Oof. Should I separate that out before applying? You should
Not before applying, but you probably should.
You should separate it out for anybody. I mean, if you ever wanted to sell that, if you ever want to get funding for it, you're going to need to do that eventually. So, I mean, look, applications are open for the next 10 days or 12 days. So apply. And then I would say whether you get into TinySeed or not, because I've done this before and I had to separate the businesses and it was really a much better decision.
Yeah. And I will say that there are folks who are in TinySeed who had to do that.
Yep.
There was at least a couple who went to that. Like we sent them an offer, they accepted the offer, but then they had to, work on I guess you don't get the investment money until everything is set up correctly, but they can start the program because that process can take a long time. They can start the program while they're doing that.
All right. Is there a minimum and maximum % of equity that you are looking for? Yeah. So the TinySeed terms, go to tinyseed.com/FAQ, and we fund $120,000 for the first founder, $180,000 for 2, and $220,000 for 3. And we take between 10 and 12% equity based on a number of factors. We have funded companies between about 1,000 MRR and 100,000 MRR through TinySeed. And so there obviously is, as you get towards that 100,000 MRR, there is some, a bit more negotiation that happens. But these days, I think if you're over 50 or 60, you probably want to look at the TinySeed Syndicate, maybe more than the accelerator, but it depends on what you want. If you really want the accelerator experience, we would happily fund companies in that range.
I think we have 2 minutes left. Do you want to do that highlighted one?
2 minutes. 3 questions. All right. Yeah, I'll do the highlighted. A potential competitor is a member of yours already. Does that pose a conflict of interest?
That is a great question. We know that we are going to be funding competitors, and we try not to do competitors within the same batch. But if it's a previous batch, absolutely no problem. You still have access to your own accelerator program, your own cohort. You can keep things to a cohort. I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this, but essentially it doesn't pose a conflict of interest. Mm-hmm. We will be funding competitors through the life of TinySeed just because due to the number of people that we're going to be funding, and we will try to work with you to make sure that there's not going to be any kind of potential conflicts of interest between you and that person if you have an offer for TinySeed. Well said. That's a great question, though. Yeah, yep. It's definitely something where, in the first 3 years of the program, I was like, cool, we don't have to worry about this. And now we're at this point, we're like, okay, cool. We have to, we've gotten big enough now. This is a good question. We knew it would happen. Yep. Mm-hmm. How do profit distributions work? And this is an element that the TinySeed terms is venture capitalists don't fund LLCs. They don't want profit distributions. TinySeed allows you, if you want to grow your business for the long term and just take cash out of the business, then you can do that. The way it works is, let's say TinySeed purchases 12% of your company for X amount. You, as the founder, can take a salary up to $250,000 before you have to pay TinySeed anything. $250,000 a year. Then if you pull any additional money out of the business, that is classified as a dividend or an owner's draw. And TinySeed, if we own 12%, gets 12% of that. So in a year, if you pulled out $100,000, you pulled out $350,000, then we would get $12,000, and you would get 350 minus 12,000. What is that? 330. I know. Yeah, math on the fly. But that's the basics. It's pro rata. We have equity, so it's just a simple. That's why we decided to go with equity. Is the terms are so simple and they're so easy to understand. There's not a bunch of if then else statements there. Mm-hmm. And it also allows us not to, other VCs, they need you to do that additional raise or do the sell or whatnot in order to have that as a positive impact. And this allows us to work with bootstrappers who want to just continue working post TinySeed. Yep. Awesome. We are about to wrap, but we have 2 questions left, and I think the answer is the same to both of them. So the first question is, do we need to have a working product with customers? Our app will be ready in about 6 weeks, although we have a demo video. The answer is you should have people paying you for this before you apply. Second question. Apply for a second one. Yep. 6 months from now, we'll have another one. You should be in a better spot then. The second question, I run a one-man services company. It's IT training, profitable but not recurring. And I'm about to launch a subscription model for self-service training. Should I wait for the next batch? The answer is yes, you should wait. If you don't have recurring revenue coming in, just hold off. It's every 6 months. It's easy.
We'll still be here.
We'll still be
Yeah.
here. We're still
Yeah.
writing checks. Awesome. Well, thanks
We
so
did
much.
it.
Yeah, we made it. And this time we got through all the questions. Only 1 minute late. Don't you dare answer and add another question to this document. Producers.
I
Remember.
know. His fingers are itching.
I know.
So-
he wants to do it just to.
For anyone who wants to review this afterwards, I will take this recording, be putting it up on tinyseed.com/latest tomorrow morning. And it should be, I believe, should be on YouTube pretty immediately because it's being live streamed on YouTube. So I'm pretty sure that'll be up as of today.
Yeah. And thanks everybody for joining us. Again, I am Rob Walling, and we look forward to receiving any of your questions. You can obviously hit the TinySeed site or hello@tinyseed.com, and Tracy or Alex will respond. Thanks, Tracy and Alex, for hanging out with me for this hour.
Yeah, seriously.
Good fun.
Nice to see you.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. We are out.
Bye.